Hey guys, kinggath here with another patch for Sim Settlements. This is patch 4.0.4, which I'm calling the Liberators. So note that this patch is for Sim Settlements and for Conqueror, and there's also the 1.1.3 patch of Workshop Framework, and you're going to want to make sure you grab all three if you're using Conqueror, because some of the code is in each of those mods, so you're going to want to make sure that you've got them all up to date or you will run into problems with Conqueror. All right, so now the big new feature in this patch is definitely related to Conqueror, and it's especially for those of you guys who want to play the good guy. So if you're not playing Conqueror, there are tons of bug fixes in general in the mods. Check out the full patch notes. This was a big bug fix patch for me. I took a lot of time to dig through the forums and try and take out the nastiest issues you guys have had reported. It is an ongoing battle to get all these bug reports under control. We've currently got a nice fellow by the username of who's trying to dig through it all and parse it apart for me and figure out which ones are actual bugs, which ones are user errors, which ones are duplicates. So get it all organized. But until he gets that all done, I wanted to make sure I took care of the obvious issues that were major. So lots of bug fixes. All right. Now on to the reason for this patch name. I've called it the Liberators because of the way this helps handle some of those new faction packs you guys may have seen popping up on the Nexus. So the idea behind Conqueror going forward is I want to be able to support gameplay that meshes well with both good guys and bad guys in the broader sense of things. So I know, some of these factions are probably a little bit on the fence. They're neither good nor bad. And, maybe someone making these faction packs isn't trying to make them specifically one or the other, but I'm giving a gameplay method that will fit more in line with somebody who's not trying to be a total dick like Jammer. So the Conqueror gameplay, as you know it, involves you taking over outposts by literally murdering everyone at that settlement or taking over vassals by just beating them down and making them subservient. So that doesn't make a lot of sense if you're trying to play a helpful faction like the Minutemen. So I've got a few faction packs installed so I can show you guys some demonstrations of how this stuff works. But the big differences between the Liberators and Conquerors are that when you make an assault on a settlement with a Liberator faction, instead of beating down the settlers or killing them, instead what you'll find is when you arrive, one of the factions that is an enemy to yours will have taken over the settlement, and all of the settlers will be captive on their knees. And until you kill all of the guards watching that place with your faction, those guys will remain captive and you will not be able to use the settlement. So once you take it over in a big fight, you will gain back the settlement and all of those captives will become your settlers there. So that's one of the differences in the way it works. And then when you're doing vassal settlements, you'll find a similar setup. Rather than beating down the settlers, they will just be all held captive. So this is one of the differences and the ways that Liberators will work versus Conquerors. And then one of the other big differences is in the way you can claim the settlements. So with a Conqueror faction, and that would include like Jammer's gang, no matter what, if you want to take over a settlement that has people, you've got to lead an assault on it. Whereas the Liberators can actually ally and claim an outpost that you already own as a settlement, even if it has people in it. So they can basically just move in and join up with that particular settlement and turn it into an outpost. You don't have to do any fighting. Now, the trade-off there is that the fights you do have to do are going to be quite a bit more difficult than those of the Conqueror because there aren't any civilians or settlers that you're battling. We've replaced them with actual NPC guards. So they're going to be quite the challenging fights. So you're going to want to make sure you are well equipped with soldiers. So I'm going to show you how you do that, how you take over a settlement. Now, I am in my Let's Play save, so some of you may recognize what's going on over there. But basically that means that this save has a lot of NPCs already here. So I'm only going to see my Liberator installed factions that are available. And at the time of this recording, the only one available that uses that is the Minutemen. The other faction packs that I've seen available right now are all flagged as Conquerors. And so if you wanted to start a settlement with them, you would have to use a War Planner's Desk in a settlement that didn't have any NPCs living in it yet. So note, that's how you will start a Conqueror. You will find a conquering faction, you will find an empty settlement and use that. If you don't have any empty settlements, go to one of your ones that have people in it and just send them all to your other settlements to clear it out before you try and activate this. So when you activate the map on the War Planner's Desk, it will bring up the first faction it finds, and then you'll have something similar to the City Leader Select where you can do next and previous. So if there are no other options, you'll just keep getting the same option. If you get instead an option that says there are no faction packs available, that's a good good sign that you have NPCs living here and all of your faction packs are conqueror. And it could also be that your faction pack just hasn't registered yet with Sim Settlements. So those of you who use a lot of add-ons know about the long delay that can occur between you loading up your game and actually being able to select the building plans from your new add-ons on the plots. That is because Sim Settlements uses a throttled registration system to keep all of these different add-ons from interfering with each other and preventing Sim Settlements from loading. So instead, it allows add-on packs to load slowly and kind of throttles them along into a path. And so it can take a couple of minutes before your faction packs are fully loaded. So if you don't find them available, it's likely that you've got a conqueror faction and you're in a settlement that has people already, or you just need to wait a little longer for them to load. So once you're sure they've loaded and you've got your option, so I'm going to go ahead and claim for this faction. So you just hit that button, and then it's going to ask you to confirm you want to convert it to an outpost. Now that's very relevant because in a future patch of Conqueror, we're going to be completely overhauling the outpost mechanics to where they will operate substantially differently than basic settlements. Right now, the only real difference between a settlement and an outpost is that an outpost you don't actually have to worry about happiness. You can't lose control of it. So an outpost is largely exactly the same. Otherwise, though, if you want things to upgrade, you need to worry about happiness and whatnot. And like I said, we'll be overhauling the mechanics in a future patch. So note that if you're converting things to outposts, one day that will actually matter. For now, the other big thing that it matters for is the fact that the outposts are the only place that your soldiers will be recruited at, as opposed to your settlements, which will just continue to gain vanilla settlers. All right, so the first thing that will happen after you successfully claim it for a faction is if Sim Settlements didn't find any of these types of flags, these flag poles in your settlement, it will place one wherever the player happens to be standing, and you're welcome to move that or scrap it if you like. But basically, that's going to show you that you claimed it for that faction. It will also update all of your martial plots for that faction, and that assumes that that faction actually has a flag configured. It might be that some of the faction packs don't. For example, we don't have a default flag enabled for the Raiders. That's something you have to unlock through Jammer's questline. But once that flag is placed, you'll know you are ready to start recruiting troops. And to do that, you're going to go to the ham radio and go what types of resources. And then you'll see a message created by the faction pack author, which will show you what type of resources your faction values. So in this case, the Minutemen, they've decided that it will be weapons and medical items, so aid items. So you can basically then activate the ham radio, go to donate resources, and just drop those in. And I'll go ahead and do that just so you can see what it looks like. So we're going to just go ahead and drop off a bunch of random weapons and whatnot. And we'll donate some chems here. So I don't know which ones he or she's got configured. So we're just going to donate a bunch of random stuff, and we'll see what happens here. And then if you go back into it, you'll see that the resources available number will have gone up based on what it found, and any of them that it couldn't use, it will return to you. So you'll see that it rejected my mod added things, the healing powder, and I guess antibiotics aren't counted. So anything that counts will go toward the resources available there. And so it can take a few moments for it to process everything, just like if you're donating things to the city planner's desk. So just give it a moment. Then you'll see that the resources available has increased. Now, in the future, we'll be introducing mechanics that adjust things like how many resources you get per resource and how many recruits you get per resource and things like that. But for now, it's all standardized, so I'll just tell you those numbers. Every new recruit costs 100 resources, and caps are worth 1 resource. The major resources are worth 20, and the minor are worth 5 resources. And again, all these numbers will fluctuate in future patches, so don't take these numbers to heart yet. They're just in the current build of Conqueror. That's what they are. And like I said, we'll introduce modifiers so that the faction pack creators can have some control over that. We'll allow building plans to alter those things, all sorts of stuff like that. That's coming down the line. But so right now I have enough resources to get 2 recruits. Well, I'm going to donate some caps because I want to get 5, because 5 is the minimum number you need to run an attack. And I want to run an attack so you guys can see it. All right, so now I have 760 resources, and you'll see I'm only going to recruit 5 tomorrow. So this is another one of those numbers that's hard capped in the current build, but we'll add adjustments to that in the future. And that means you can get the most you can get is 5 new troops per day, which is the number you need to run a new assault. Now, the other thing that controls whether or not you'll get recruits is if you have enough beds in your outposts. So any of your settlements you convert to outposts, make sure you have some empty beds there. It will try and place them in your first settlement or your first outpost. That's considered your main outpost. And then if it doesn't have room there, it will look to your other outposts for additional space. So if you don't want to overflow one, you can build beds in a bunch of different outposts, and the recruitment resources will be spent to fill those up over time. Same thing happens when you go and make an attack. It can pull troops from any of your outposts, so you don't have to worry about piling them all in. And that was done because we know the game is a little bit unstable with a lot of NPCs in one particular settlement, so we wanted to give you the chance to spread those NPCs out so you can capture more outposts and build more beds or residential plots. Those also count, and that will ensure that you don't blow up your game by having too many NPCs in one place. All right, so now we're going to sleep through the night so that we get some more troops, and then we'll show you what it looks like to run a Liberator assault. All right, so once you have enough troops, and you can quickly check that by attempting to go to the raid board here and click coordinate raids, and that screen can take a moment to catch up because it does need to check all of your different outposts and count out how many attackers you have available. And so it'll show that I have 5 there. If I didn't have enough, it would tell me that there weren't enough right here instead of this start new assault. But you hit start new assault, and then you get to choose what you want to attack. And I've shown this before in videos, but I just want to go over it one more time just to make sure. And we're going to just make an attack on an arbitrary settlement, and we'll meet you over there so you can see how the attack goes. But it will make a save in case something goes poorly, like you losing your battle. So you have an autosave available you can roll back to if it was way harder than you expected and you don't want to lose your troops. And then you choose how many attackers, and it'll say in the corner, gathering your forces for an attack. And then once you get this quest started thing, you are ready to go join your faction for an attack on that settlement. And here we are. So we've arrived. Our forces are ready to go. Now, one thing that may not be clear, and if you haven't played much of Conqueror, you might not be aware of this, but these troops don't just appear here magically for the assault itself. They actually live in your outpost. You can give them plots, and that includes with goofy factions like if you're playing the super mutant faction that exists or whatnot. All of the NPCs can live in the settlements, in the outposts, and you can treat them just like normal settlers. So you can assign them to things, and then when it's combat time, they will join you over here for a fight. So I'm not actually going to trigger the fight. Instead, I'm going to just use free cam so I can show you what it looks like when you're a Liberator faction. So many of you probably already know what it looks like when you're a Conqueror faction. Basically, everybody's running around in here and they are aggressive towards you, including the citizens and settlers. When you come in as a Liberator, all of these guys, they will aggro on you when you get close, but to start, they're just kind of wandering around, and you'll find that all of the settlers that originally lived here are now bound and tied up in their homes or on their beds. Now, there is an issue you might run into with some clipping where they will be clipped inside of their beds. That's just a little goofy engine issue because it tries to, when you arrive at a settlement, place them all on their assigned objects, and so sometimes they can be clipping in weird spots, but if we find a solution for that, we'll put it in. But just know that that's normal. If you find a guy bound clipped through things, I'm already aware, you don't need to report that as a bug. But once you kill off all of the occupying forces, you will gain control of this settlement, or if you did a vassal attack, it will become allied and synced up with a provisioner to your outposts, and those settlers will all become unbound and will become settlers you can control at this particular settlement. If you did an outpost and if you did a vassal, they will just go back to working and supplying resources to your outpost. So if you haven't played with Conqueror yet, that's it in a nutshell. Essentially, you run attacks and start taking over the settlement so they can supply your outposts, which then allow you to build a bigger and more powerful army. And the more outposts and vassals you have, the harder each of these attacks will be. So the bigger your forces, the bigger the counter forces will be. So each time you go to a new settlement, it will be a little harder than the last one to attack, and then you just slowly take over all of the settlements in the game. And so that is the big difference between Liberator and Conqueror. I will definitely be adding more differences over time to further differentiate the two so that you get unique gameplay experiences. All right, guys, I hope you enjoy playing with these new faction packs. Check them out. There were 4 up within about 36 hours of us releasing the toolkit, and I'm sure we'll see many more in the future. All right, guys, take care and enjoy the mods.